dialogue that'll be productive and allow us to grow as we learn from others' perspectives and experiences. So that's what we're going to do today. That's the standard we're going to hold for the space, and that's the standard we will hold you to, especially in your responses and in your questions. And as you listen, we ask that you apply that as well. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but we want you to be 100% present, extending and presuming. We have some amazing panelists, and they're going to bring a wealth of experience, of knowledge, of wisdom. We want you to give them your attention, give them your energy, give them your thoughts, and truly take in all that they are bringing to us. They're taking time out of their schedules to contribute to our community. So please respect that. We ask that you listen deeply. I think it's very easy as passionate leaders and passionate community members to have listened, to listen, because we really are trying to form our rebuttal, our response, and in doing so, we often miss part of what we're trying to listen to. So listen to the thoughts and perspectives, the emotions, all that's shared today, so you can truly learn from that. Speak your truth. The panelists will speak their truth. We ask that you do the same as you're asking questions, as you're responding. I, as Kyrie Williams, a man of color, a black man, I still can't speak for all men that look like me, and that shouldn't be asked of me. That's not fair, and we won't ask that of you, nor will we ask that of our panelists. And when things get difficult, turn to wonder. We are bringing to this space all that is a part of us, all that's been poured into us, from our family values, to our community values, to our culture, to our heritage, to our religious beliefs, to our sexual orientation, all the different things that make us who we are, all those different layers of diversity that are beautiful and make us who we are, and make us the amazing community college campus that we are, campus and environment. But it also means that we are viewing it through that lens, and sometimes that can mean we don't understand when people differ from us, but it's because they're viewing it through their lens as well. So turn to wonder, learn from it, listen, observe. This is not about a debate; it's about learning and having a true dialogue. So we just ask that you keep those principles in mind. We'll also put them in the chat, and we ask that you just help us to cultivate a safe, a courageous space where we can truly learn from each other. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. So I want to say thank you for coming here. My name is Nicole Bell. I work for Austin Community College. I am an organizational development staff development trainer. With that having been said, I'd like to take this opportunity to allow my co-facilitator, Dr. Bieger, to introduce herself.
Thank you, Nicole. Dr. Melissa Bieger. I am the Director of Academic Success for high school programs here at ACC, and I also am part of the committee for the TRHT week. And so I'm assisting Nicole with this panel. So the way it's going to kind of work, she's going to lead the discussion as getting us kicked off with the panelists, and we're going to have a Slido link in the chat. And also one you'll see on the PowerPoint. And so as people are talking, they may hit on some of the things you're interested in, but if you have specific questions, go ahead and submit them to the Slido, and we will have about 10 to 15 minutes at the end where we will try to address the questions that people have submitted. So now I'm gonna take it away, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bieger. So the title of today's session is called Women Crush Wednesday. You may be wondering, why did we call it that? Well, I don't know if you've heard, but today's a great day to crush on some women, especially one in particular, and that would be Vice President Kamala Harris. She has been officially inaugurated and sworn in as our vice president for the next 4 years. So thought it'd be a great opportunity to get together some amazing women in Central Texas that I actually have the pleasure and honor of knowing and calling friend to talk about what does that mean? How does that feel? And where do we go from here? I'm so happy that you all have joined us for this conversation. I want to take a few minutes to introduce to you who we have on our panel. When I tell you that these women are amazing, I don't mean that just, in any small term of the word. They're doing some incredible work in Central Texas, and it is truly an honor. I feel blessed to be able to call them friend, to have their numbers in my cell phone, and to be able to reach out to them. So I really want to thank you for joining us today and for sharing with us your wisdom. So who we have with us today is Miss Tiffany Harrison. I'm sorry, let me say that correctly. Miss Trustee Tiffany Harrison for Round Rock ISD. She knows I get excited when I get to say that. We also have Miss Skye Halhaul, my sister, my friend, equity specialist extraordinaire. We have another dear friend of mine, Dr. Laura Cortez from Cortez Consulting. And my newest friend is Dr. Mina McNary, dentist extraordinaire, but equity advocate to the 10th degree. So happy to have all of you with us. Let me give you a little background about these ladies. When I tell you they're amazing, again, I make no small talk of that. Trustee Tiffany Harrison is an educator, community organizer, entrepreneur, designer, and investor. As a community organizer, Tiffany advocates for educational and racial equity. Tiffany is a Courageous Conversations About Race affiliate practitioner with the Pacific Educational Group and is a consultant for schools, districts, and private and public companies around racial equity practices. Tiffany holds a master's degree of business administration with a concentration in finance and marketing from Baylor University. Tiffany's personal life mission is to promote inclusion, diversity, and understanding while working to eliminate bias, bigotry, and oppression in her community. She spells it with unity capitalized. And as I mentioned, as of last November, she was newly sworn in as Round Rock ISD School Board Trustee. Mrs. Skye Halhaul is pronouns she, her, hers, has served and supported students and families in Central Texas for over 15 years as an equity advocate, restorative educator, and healthcare administrator. Skye is from the Potawatomi and Ottawa tribal nations and grew up in Houston, Texas. She's a proud AISD parent and an advocate for Native rights and equitable student opportunities. Skye is also a Courageous Conversations About Race affiliate practitioner with the Pacific Educational Group. She received her graduate degree in educational equity and cultural diversity from the University of Colorado in Boulder. Skye works with organizations to align their vision and mission with an equity-centered approach. She facilitates anti-racist training related to equity, inclusion, restorative, and culturally responsive practices to support educational and corporate teams, as well as community organizations. She's also what we call a restorative circle leader, one of the best. Dr. Laura J. Cortez. Dr. Cortez is the founder of Cortez Consulting, a community engagement organization. She designs new ways to effectively engage the public, particularly those left out of the conversation traditionally. Think Barack Obama early days, but an amazing woman doing the work. Laura is also a graduate of Leadership Austin and sits on the Austin Parks and Foundation Leadership Board. I got the opportunity to be in the same class, best class ever, with Dr. Cortez for Leadership Austin. And Dr. Nicole McNary. Hold on, let me make sure you hear what I'm about to say here. Dr. Nicole McNary is a dentist practicing in the Central Texas region, former U.S. Army major. You heard that? Okay. Honorably discharged in 2015, Dr. McNary now resides in Williamson County with her husband and 3 children and is an active community member working towards equity every single day. I'm so proud and happy to have you all here with us today. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be a part of this panel. So, my first question, and this is for all of you, is today has been amazing, but it took us a minute to get here. And I am wondering how did you feel and what were your first thoughts? If you'll think back to that Saturday, November 7th, when it was finally confirmed that Kamala Harris was going to be the first Black, Indigenous woman of color sworn in as Vice President for the United States. And why don't we have Dr. McNary, why don't you go first?
Wow, all kinds of feels. I was actually in Houston with my parents, and suffice to say, they are Trump supporters, so we lean on the opposite sides of the spectrum. So it was interesting, but as a South Asian female, to see a representation of my culture in front of me on that level gave me inspiration and hope beyond belief.
Awesome. Tiffany, what were your thoughts?
My thoughts were it's about time. I'll be honest, I was feeling a little bit of despair up until that moment. It's actually a good girlfriend that encouraged me and reminded me of something that I'm always reminding other people. And that's what Brian Stevenson says. He says that hopelessness is the enemy of justice, or maybe he says it the other way around. But basically, we have to maintain hope. And I think I just felt immense relief. I had almost started coaching myself of like, okay, Tiffany, if this goes the wrong way again, we will pick ourselves up, we'll take a day's break, and we will keep moving. But I just felt immense relief, and like the stars were aligning and things were finally going in the direction they needed to be and how they should have been going for so long.
Forever hopeful. Thank you so much. Skye, where were you at on the 7th? What were you thinking? How was it feeling?
Yeah, for me, it was just really surreal. I think kind of like Tiffany had mentioned, it's just a little bit of like reticence, not necessarily preparing for this moment today that we are celebrating. I was so excited that Biden chose Kamala Harris. And I feel like it's a clear message to all of us, especially the generation of youth growing up, that women are strong and capable leaders at the highest level. My son is 7 years old and he gets to celebrate this day, and he's not going to remember a time really whenever there wasn't a woman in this highest level of position and office. And so I just feel like it's just a breakthrough moment. And today I really feel affirmed, I feel validated, and I feel like we will never go back. We'll just continue upward and onward.
Awesome. Thank you. And Dr. Cortez, tell us something about how you were thinking and feeling that day.
Well, I have to share that with everybody else saying there was a definitely sense of relief, but this collective excitement, because I think one of the things that she brings to the table is that, I felt like we were all succeeding at the same time. This was a moment for all of us to celebrate. And I remember the years before when we didn't go our way, I remember telling my mom there was this deep sense of sadness, like I wanted to cry. And I cried that day too, but it was a different cry of joy and happiness, but also feeling just collective accomplishment, because in her own right, she's extremely successful. She earned this space that she has. And I think for women that are accomplishing their dreams and reaching, highest levels of public office or education, for them to see that someone who's worked so hard to be in that space can do it and have that right to be there, I think just means so much for us moving forward.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we're here. We did it, right? She's in the White House. I just saw on television, they pulled up, they walked up the stairs, they opened the front door. So has Vice President Harris kicked in the glass ceiling with her chucks? Are we done? That's my next question. And whoever would like to answer can go.
I think it's a start, but really this is just the beginning. I have a couple of friends who had baby girls in December, and they posted their baby girls and said they will never know a world where there hasn't been a Black, and Southeast Asian vice president. And so that's really exciting. But to think how many years it's taken to get us here, it helps me to know that this is just the beginning, and I want to make space to celebrate, and I want to make space to continue to push forward, and to have Black and Indigenous women particularly take their rightful places. We know that we're the ones driving the work in so many spaces, but take those rightful places of acknowledged and recognized leadership.
Thank you. Tiffany, you just led us into our next question. So how do we keep up the momentum with what we've seen, as you mentioned before, where we have Black, Indigenous, women of color who do a lot of the activating and organizing across the country for systemic change. This isn't new. So how do we continue? I mean, shouldn't we be tired by now? I mean, what do we do next? How do we keep up the momentum? And let's see, Dr. Cortez, would you like to answer that one?
Sure, I'd love to. So, I think about my own space. For a very long time, I was in higher ed, and then started my own business 6 years ago. And what I see in these spaces that we are, and I agree with Trustee Tiffany, because we've just begun and we have to continue to build on this momentum, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's a lot of ways that we can do that in our own spaces. I have quite a diverse staff at my office, and I continue to hire diverse staff. But in that, I also share with them that we have to support each other as women of color, or as whatever space that they're in. And I think that as we reach, as they say, as more of us come to the table, we also have to lend a hand to those wanting to have a seat at the table. And I think it no longer that there's a space only for certain individuals, but instead, how do we emulate what it is to be a woman of color in a position of power, but more so that we have the ability to make change and to make positive change and to be mentors. So I would say that's the work ahead of us.
I saw some heads shaking and nodding, so I think they're in agreement. Would anybody like to add to that?
I would love to. Thanks, Dr. Cortez. I wanted to piggyback, as a female in the Army and as a major in the position I was running a clinic, I often faced that in a room full of men, and most often white men. So I kind of took a different route and brought in people that did not have the same life experience as the majority of the people in the room, so that we could get a different perspective on how things could be run.
It's all about those perspectives and recognizing the need for multiple perspectives. Absolutely. Thank you. So my next question is, we've mentioned that the work does fall to, for community transformation, often falls to women, especially women of color. Why do you think that is? Skye?
I think it becomes kind of an automatic. There's a hyper visibilization that happens for women of color, and an expectation a lot of times for emotional labor. And I think that we find our responsibilities to our ancestors to really fight for a better future for the generations to come. And so I think that there's a lot of different factors that are involved, and we just have to continue to fight. This isn't, today we get to celebrate, but we have to continue with our coalition building and finding ways to sustain and support one another to continue on.
Thank you. Would anybody like to add to that? Or not. You don't have to labor any further for me. No problem at all. Okay, so here's another question. Overall, so we've talked about how you felt on the 7th of November, but in general, what does this election mean to you in particular, this particular election? Anyone can answer.
It means a lot. And I guess I would tie this back into the last question about why the work of community transformation falls to women of color. To get us to this point, there was a lot of weight shouldered by women of color. And, today we're celebrating a new president and vice president, but we're also celebrating, Ossoff and Warnock, and that was really the work of a Black woman, the work of winning and flipping states. That was the work and the votes of Indigenous women and Indigenous people. And so this election means to me being seen and being heard, as a Black woman. And what I would like future elections to mean is to be respected, though, because there's still this feeling in me, if I'm being honest, and I always seek to be. We did it, I think of Kamala calling and we did it, Joe. I don't know if you've seen that video. We did it, Joe. We did it. You're president. And so I think of how excited I am and how thrilled I am about this election, but then how I know that we will celebrate today. And as a Black woman, I'm ready to work again tomorrow, because this did not end, white supremacy. This did not end racism. I picked out some of my favorite moments of the election today, and of why is my brain not working? I picked out some of my favorite moments of today, and some of them were like being represented and hearing Lift Every Voice chime softly in the background. It wasn't like a big fanfare thing. It was just, there was a moment during the inauguration where they played the Negro national anthem, right? Or having a president that acknowledged that we can deliver racial justice, naming white supremacy, acknowledging that, there has to be reconciliation. So I think that this is a bright new future, and that's what this election means to me. And it also means that we have a ton of work ahead of us still.
Man. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else want to add to that? You just
go ahead, Skye.
Yeah, I really think about too how much we work together, and again that acknowledgement. I think going back to what Tiffany said, right? We have Native nations who flipped Arizona, Wisconsin. We look at 60 to 90% of the vote, right? And how that got minimized, right? With macroaggressions by CNN, labeling the Native community as something else, right? And as resilient as we are, and in solidarity, we started making jokes, making t-shirts, making memes, right? But the reality is that is such a minimization, right, of the efforts that we made. And now we have this historic precedence where we now have 6 Native members of Congress, and we also have Deb Haaland, who's going to be the first on the presidential cabinet as the Secretary of the Interior. And this is huge, right? This is really huge. But this is by no means the end, right? This is just the beginning.
I love that it also validated some people who had never been involved in politics before. Hey, people thought my vote doesn't matter, my vote doesn't count, nothing ever changes. Yes, it does. There were so many minor margins in so many places, and they felt seen. And these are family members, these are, cousins, aunties, uncles calling me, thank you for telling me to vote. This is so important and validates how they feel about the election process.
And then I would just add, I think as we were saying these moments to remember about today, I do remember President Biden speaking and the sun shining on him. And I think as a Latino community, we've lived in the shadows for so long. And the fact to know that he is coming forth with an immigration policy, to come forth with ways for people to have citizenship. I think for me and my family and what I represent, I felt the sun shining on our face and on our community today.
I just want to say again, I'm the lucky one here. You guys are my friends. I can't believe you guys are my friends. Okay. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on that question. I want to remind our participants, if you have other questions around this topic, please be sure to either put them in the chat. Well, we actually have a link to Slido here, so you can actually enter your questions on that link, and that way we can talk about them towards the end of our session. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to hear your questions, so that we can keep the conversation going. So I have another question, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I want to know more about, what do you think is important about women leading in predominantly white hetero male spaces, women of color leading in those spaces? What is important about that? Tell me more about that.
Woo, What's not important about that? I think in my work as an educator, so I was a classroom teacher for 8.5 years. And one thing that I noticed is that I actually had great success with my white male students, even though sometimes there was resistance there. And a lot of times we talk about representation being important for those who look like us. And it's extremely important, because when my friends' baby girls, you know, see their vice president and maybe even one day their president, I don't know, knock on wood, when they see that on the TV, that normalizes that they too can be that, and they too can pursue and achieve. But what I think it does too, in predominantly white male spaces, is it reminds people that, particularly white men, that women have value, and Black and Indigenous women of color have tremendous value, have knowledge, have wisdom. And I think that that's really important. I think that we need to make sure that people can see women show up in their full humanity, particularly women of color.
And I would add to that. Oh, go ahead. In my space too, that I get to work in, and being in public policy and sitting in spaces where I think what this also means is that we're going to be doing things differently. So there's always been this traditional way, heteronormative, white male, the way that things are seen through that lens. And I think this is just going to change. And if there's already women sitting at the table making these decisions, I think we're just going to be the more confident, because we have a different way of looking at things, a different way about doing things. And, you know, as I remember Vice President Harris, she was the one on that stage during the debate that said, you know, this is something that I'm calling out that has happened. And she did that to now who is the president. And he honored that and has her now as a leader. And I think what that's going to allow, because when we're in positions of leadership, we are often faced with the most difficult decisions and saying things sometimes that people don't want to accept or sometimes don't want to admit. And so I think that's going to allow us, and I think at least for me, it's given me another sense of confidence that, you know, we just do things differently, and we also have the ability to feel confident to say that that's okay, that sometimes we may disagree with what the norms are.
Dr. Cortez, that's so powerful. It applies to my specific group. I work in a group of 5 doctors. 4 of them are white males and me. And so prior to me coming on board, you know, a lot of things were done a certain way. And when I came on board, hey, we have to make some changes now. There's a different perspective, a different angle to look at things. And when I first came on board, it was a lot of, hey, you haven't had problems in the dental field or the Army being a woman, have you? You know, there was no knowledge of that kind of stuff. So it's been a lot of education, and it's been a lot of different life experiences that they had never had before. So the power to be able to use my voice and my life experiences to change policy in our own company, just to keep it personal within my life, you know, that's been huge. And to find the courage to be able to keep going and not be fearful of any kind of retribution is huge.
Skye, do you want to add to that?
I think that y'all just shared so much, you know, and I think that we have to often show up with an increased level of preparedness and tenacity, because our leadership has most likely been challenged and diminished by male colleagues. And we really work, like you said, Dr. Cortez, to do things differently, right? And so we work to harness the collective wisdom of the communities that we serve, and we need more of that.
Something you just said, Skye, reminds me of something that my father told me when I was young, and that was repeated in one of my favorite guilty pleasure television shows, is that he said, Nicole, as you grow up, you're going to have to be, as a Black woman, twice as good, twice as smart, and twice as prepared. And then I was sitting there one day on a Thursday watching Shonda TV, and here comes Papa Pope with the very same message for Olivia. So I then knew, well, I knew he was telling the truth back then, as I grew older, but I especially knew that I wasn't the only one getting that message when I saw it show up in my everyday television show that I watch every week. So Skye, you hit the nail on the head, is that those multiple perspectives, those other ways of looking at things, all of you ladies really spoke to that in this question, is necessary in these spaces. And I'm here for it. Let's get ready. But they should be ready. They should be preparing for us. So let's see. I think I have 2 more questions. What do you think we need more of here in Central Texas for Black, Indigenous women of color? What are we missing? Like, what are we lacking here in Central Texas?
Can I start off? I think that a lot of times words like equity, diversity, inclusion, and now anti-racism get thrown around casually. And often there's little or no shared meaning or understanding of what those words mean. I think that we need positions that are not window dressing, that are not the diversity role, that are not meant to approve predetermined ideas or agendas. I think in every single educational institution that I've worked for, there's always a strong pull to maintain the status quo. And speaking truth to power can really get your budget cut. It can get you fired or pushed out. And we need more intentionally designed affinity spaces and a true investment in equity, diversity, inclusion, and anti-racist education that includes sustainability and resource allocation, so that we aren't having to constantly fight to justify our humanity whilst fighting for equity and accountability.
Take away some of that duality that weighs us down. Absolutely. But anyone? Yeah.
Sure. I think support. This work is hard. It's hard work. And so I think that the women that would be doing this work either way, because a lot of the work that has moved us forward is born of passion. It's not born of recognition. Stacey Abrams, how much recognition did she get along the way? We're all giving her flowers now, but I mean, there were blood, sweat, tears that went into her work. There were losses that went into her work personally and professionally. And so I think we need more support for Black and Indigenous women of color in this area, financial support, support of giving time and space. And, I think of people that make change, and I think of how frequently they're not compensated to make that change. As I said, earlier, they do it because they're passionate about it. So I wonder what it could be like if there were more structures for financial compensation and support for women that are doing this work anyway.
And Tiffany, you are working towards being a champion for that in some of the programs that you've put together in the last year, and it's a beautiful thing to see. And thank you for your work on that, sister. Anyone else?
Y'all, I just want to tell you that Trustee Harrison and the group of women that she worked with to put together these programs for racial equity, the professional development they put together, and all that labor without any kind of compensation, they are true heroes in this area for doing what they are doing. And they have opened many minds, especially Round Rock ISD. So just a big congratulations to all the behind the scenes work that's being put in.
I ditto that, absolutely. Okay, so Dr. McNary, you led me right into my last question. Thank you so very much. How are we going to keep up this momentum? What's the plan? Tiffany, this is a great opportunity for you to talk to us about some of those programs that you've created in the last year to do just that, give space and support to the Black, Indigenous women, people of color who are doing the work, and any other things that you, Skye, Dr. Cortez, Dr. McNary, you want to talk about. How are we going to keep up the momentum so that we can continue to kick down, dismantle, throw a rock through the glass ceiling, or kick it in with our chucks, whatever we need to do?
Yes, well, I'm happy to talk about a couple things, but I think that my first response to this question may be counterintuitive. To keep up the momentum, I really think that as a Black and Indigenous woman of color, I need to slow down. Rest is resistance. Taking care of my body is resistance. I have not slept since January 6th, since the insurrection. So I'm like praying that tonight I will be able to rest easy, easier now that we have a new president and vice president. So to keep up the momentum, we really have to focus on taking care of ourselves. And a lot of times people use self-care in a very frou-frou way, getting nails done, getting hair done. And those things are really important and fun things to do. But oftentimes I feel that we sacrifice ourselves as Black and Indigenous women of color. We feel that we have to work twice as hard, go, go, go. And let's add to the fact that some of us are also mothers and partners, and that's a lot. And so in the past year, between COVID and just the events of the world, I've learned to really slow down, to value and prioritize rest, to welcome abundance into my life without having to exhaust and kill myself to achieve it. One of my great mentors is Dr. Tiffany Harrison, who was at ACC and is now the Chief Equity Officer in AISD. And one thing that resonates with me all the time that she's told me is that white supremacy will kill you. And that goes doubly for Black and Indigenous women of color. So that's just a consideration as rest. There are a couple of things that I've been working on over the past year and collaborating with others on. The first is called the Radical Equity Fund for Reparations. And that is a micro reparations fund where people that feel led, particularly white people, can give. And you can Google Radical Equity Fund for Reparations. There's a GoFundMe. Give, and that money is redistributed to particularly Black people doing the work. So we had a distribution of about $10,000 that went to 19 Black entrepreneurs, Black community leaders, Black youth entrepreneurs, Black teachers. So that was awesome. And then the other thing that I've been working on is called Food Justice. And Food Justice is a mutual aid program, and same kind of thing, a micro reparations fund where we redistribute that in groceries and in prepared meals. And with the time of COVID, there are many people that are in financial needs. So financial needs taken into consideration, but also the weight of racial trauma is taken into consideration. So some of these meals are distributed to Black women, Black mothers that are tired of turning on TV and having to see police brutality, someone harm someone who looks just like their son or their daughter. And so those are just two projects that I'm working on in this area. And I want to keep momentum. And the reason why I prioritize these projects is because those are the people that are continuing to serve our community and uplift our community. So I would love to find ways to uplift them and support them.
And thank you for that work. It's important work. How else are we keeping up the momentum, ladies? Dr. Cortez, Dr. McNary, Skye?
I would say that I also agree with taking care of yourself. This past year has definitely showed me that. I mean, our work that we do, which is public engagement, we are available to the community, and that's typically means evenings and weekends, which I love. I mean, that is the work that keeps me going, the work that keeps us that are doing public engagement work. But I do agree with you that we do have to continue to care for ourselves, because if we don't, we're giving from an empty bucket. So always refilling that in some other way, taking care of others who we see are not doing that, because we have to fuel others. But I would also say it's giving people back some dignity. I think in so many ways, when I think about the communities that I work with, in the economic state that they're in, that the fact that they don't have enough just to feed their kids, and the work that I do in the Eastern Crescent in Austin, our children don't even have internet in some cases, and we're mobilizing to make sure they have access to Wi-Fi, those types of things, I think in some way takes away that. And how do we show our families they're deserving of these access of programs and resources and services, and really rebuilding back that dignity? Because I think it takes that away from you when you are just so struck. You're already in a state of economic suffrage, and then it just happens that we have this major pandemic and it makes things 10 times worse. So in our work that we're doing for public engagement is trying to give people back that dignity and a responsibility to the municipalities that I work with, which is many times the city entities, and saying, we need to make sure we continue to serve those families and those communities who have for so long not been served. And so I think those are the ways that we're committed to doing that work.
Thanks for sharing that, Dr. Cortez and Trustee Harrison. To keep it again local here, I like to lean in to people, especially people that don't fully understand the depth of what people go through on a daily basis. So I've leaned in to local PTA. I've leaned in to neighbors. I've pushed on people, and I encourage, for events that we have locally, for whatever we do, hey, bring 2 or 3 of your friends, have them call me. Here's my cell phone number. I try to involve people who have not ever been in this realm before, nor have had that life experience before. And that's shown to be pretty powerful for that person as well, to be exposed to something like that.
And Skye.
Yeah, I think of all the different roles that we hold in our community, and it is important to take that time that we need to step back whenever we need to, and to make sure that we are, again, building that community so that we can lean on each other to be able to help support one another. For me, through my role as now a board member with Great Promise for American Indians, also as our PTA advocacy liaison, and my consultation work with Full Humanity, it's really, again, coming back to that community building, working to curate multiracial, multicultural healing spaces where we can connect, where we can learn, where we can grow, and we can transform the systems that do not allow us to exist in our full humanity.
Ladies, I appreciate all of those wonderful ideas and the way that you are making sure that you are staying in tune with yourself as well as the community and the individuals that you connect and do this work with. We do have some questions. If I'm not mistaken, I think we have some questions from our audience.
We do. It's 4 that showed up on the Slido. So what I'm going to do, because we only have a few minutes left, I will read one, and then just whichever of you feels compelled to answer it, just toss it out there. So the first one is, so now we have women appointed to influential seats at the table. Many of these women represent cultures and communities who are traditionally invisible. Do you think that these leaders' voices will be heard? Will the traditional influencers be ready to listen and amplify? It's a biggie, but
that's a good question. And I think that oftentimes we think when we elect someone, and I'm experiencing this even as a board member, that our work is done. We've elected them, we've got them in there, they are going to fight for us. We need to do our part to back these elected officials and these women up by advocating for them from the outside, advocating for them for constituents. If we see that they're not being treated right, we have a voice. Write letters, emails, call. Let's be obnoxious and not just get them in there and then leave them. Let's show up with our community to continue to support their work.
All right. And so that actually kind of relates to the next question, which is very specific. What do you predict will be the greatest change in public policy as a result of Kamala Harris being the vice president? Any predictions?
I personally would like to see the 1776 commission gotten rid of.
Oh. Interesting. Anybody else? Okay, well, we'll think about that one. Think about what you would like for her maybe to advocate for. Yeah, we'll see. Okay, the next one is, how do we see the world changing with the inauguration through the eyes of our children? I think one of you already alluded to that about, having a child that would never know a world where this hadn't happened. What else can you think of?
I just think of the possibilities. So my nephew, I recall my brother sharing me a story when President Obama was elected, and just, how he saw the wonder and excitement of that. And, it wasn't Barack Obama, it was President Obama, and what that meant, and how children see leaders, and what they, what the possibilities are. I think they're just endless. And I think for children, even now, when you see young leaders, and we have interns in our office, and the way they do things is so different, I think we have a lot to learn. But I think for our young, this is just the beginning for them, the tip of the iceberg. I think there's more to come that we just can't even imagine, anticipate, but they're already thinking. They're living in a totally different world of communication. They're living in a total different world of how to create community. And I think that's going to surprise us. And so I'm very hopeful of what's to come with our youth as they come through this, this new era for us.
Does anybody else have anything you want to add about thoughts about those little impact children?
Yes, my 4-year-old, Sophia, thought that Miss Tiffany was president of the United States, and she got elected because we were so excited that she won. So this is huge for her. We watched the inauguration together, and it's just exciting for my children to be able to see a representative of themselves on that screen at that level.
That's funny. Sorry to disappoint you, Sophia, but I'll be your campaign manager. Let her know that I'm ready for her presidential run.
I thought the same thing. I was like, I'm ready for you to run for president, and she keeps telling me no. So
yeah, well, it was pretty exciting. I have to admit, I live in the Round Rock School District, and I was pretty excited. So it was a great day for our district. All right, I think we got one more question. Oh no, we got a couple. Actually, we got a couple of questions now that come in. So what specific actions or policies would you prioritize? And it says, no holds barred, go big, to welcome more women of color into top leadership positions. So in fantasy world where, resources weren't an issue, what would you do to encourage more women of color into leadership positions?
I think recruitment is huge. You have to be able to reach the communities where those people live, wherever it may be. I never saw anybody that wasn't a white male be a dentist or be in the Army growing up. So, just the possibility that someone like me could come to a place and, hey, I'm a dentist. Hey, I was in the Army. So I would say far-reaching recruitment as far as we could go.
I think yes, and recruitment. What I'm going to say builds on that, and it's intentional, right? Like intentionally seeking out leadership. And I think it's real simple. I think we need to pay people. I think about my own story. I left my teaching job to be a trustee. So I left a paid position to volunteer like 30 or more hours of my time. And I did that because I knew the situation was so grave for our Black and Indigenous students of color and educators of color, families of color, which means that the situation is grave for everyone because we're not seeing people be able to show up in their full humanity. So that took time and intention. That's a risk. It's a long game risk, and it's not a risk that everyone can take. So a lot of times when we're recruiting women of color, we are asking them to sacrifice. We're asking them to sacrifice time with their families. We're asking them to sacrifice and do 2 jobs, typically their paying job, which most of the time doesn't pay enough, right? And then to spend their time and their passion working towards making the world a better place for all of us. How might we create recruitment opportunities that pay and pay well and help women build generational wealth for their families so that it's not an either or situation and they're not having to make tremendous sacrifices where they're already making tremendous sacrifices because they're women of color, right? So how can we make sure that they're financially supported and compensated throughout the recruitment process?
Thank you. I think we have time for about one more. Nope. Nicole says we gotta cut. So okay, sorry. So the person who submitted the last question, sorry, but I think we kind of got the spirit of everything. I think we kind of got it. So Dr. Williams, do you want to wrap us up?
So it was my question. No. Yes, absolutely. I'll wrap us up. My question was, how do men better support women in these spaces? I don't know if there's a quick response, but I think it's so important for me to know, and maybe the handful of gentlemen that are in here. And then I'll wrap up, if anyone has anything.
Money and pass the mic.
Money and pass the mic. Okay.
Money and pass the mic. So give women money to do what women know to do. We're resourceful.
Absolutely.
So give us the money. And then when you have positions of power or influence, or you get to speak, look around. Is there a woman that can better represent? If the answer is yes, go ahead and pass that mic, brother.
Pass the mic. Awesome. Thank you so much.
You know, with that you said that, Tiffany, I have to say that Dr. Williams did pass the mic for this particular panel. He was like, go forth and do. And that's how we ended up here. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, yes, thank you so much, Trustee Harrison and Dr. Cortez and Dr. McNary and Ms. Skye Halhaul, for all your insights and perspectives and experiences. It's really appreciated. We'll need to continue to do the work, but I know that this has helped us, our community, with this conversation.